Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Monthly Mindset, episode
3,
season
March.
2.
Not season March.
Season March, yeah.
Season spring.
Season spring, yeah.
Season spring.
Well, listen, as soon as you're in, please drop in some hearts. I want some hearts today.
Yeah, but
We missed out on the
Yeah.
February thing. And share it and drop a comment in. All right?
Absolutely.
So today's title is, What Are You Really Doing?
What are you really doing?
So we're kind of following on from last month. We got special guest Paul Holbrook,
Hello.
author and creator
That is
of...
the quietest minute I've ever had in my life.
We haven't been able to get a word in, so we're just going to get no. So it's probably been around. So tell us about this book, Paul, quickly. What are you doing? Yeah,
Yeah, it's my book.
this is book.
It's my business, and I created a book. I did a brand story with a lady called Rachel Savage, and she said in our first
Very good.
session,
She's very good.
she's ace.
Yeah, she's great.
She spoke at Robin Stroudnet,
She did. Yeah.
and in our first session, she said, "You know, there's a book in this, don't you?" And it's like, oh, that's a really great idea. And then went on the shelf, and then a year later, I actually took that idea off the shelf and created the book, which is what you now have in front of you.
Fantastic. And so, hey, a question then about writing a book. Because a lot of people say to me about writing stuff. So, how long did it take you to create the book? And sort of, can you give me like a simple process for it? Or was it just like, get it out there on paper and just...
No, so there was always the idea that I wanted to create a book. In terms of how long it took to create it, there's that kind of elapsed, and start to finish, how long did it take? It probably took about a year.
Right, okay.
But if you look at how much time it really took within that year, it was probably only about 2 or 3 months,
Oh, okay.
I would say.
Right.
And I think the key is if you know what you want to say and you're really passionate about it, it literally just falls out of you onto the page. I self-published. I was inspired by Robin's book, actually.
Yeah.
Take Your Shot. I think it was really, really good.
When we talk about Robin, we're talking about Robin Waite, which is basally how we came together. So
Yeah,
we've got
we
to shout
always-
out.
and
We
we always
always
say
got
that
to
to
shout out
Robin Waite.
Robin.
It's your fault,
Fantastic
Robin. Yeah,
business
we'll-
coach. Get in touch if you're interested. There you go.
But yeah, so I basically had the idea, and I kind of used a process that whenever I was working, in my kind of previous life, when I was working in the city, I wasn't a banker. I'll say that again. I wasn't a banker.
He was a coder.
I was a coder. I was techie.
For a bank.
So back then, when I was creating presentations, my process there was that I would start off with a set of slides, high-level slides, and it would just have one word on the slide. And what was it I want to get across in that one slide? And then once I got, let's say, 4 or 5 slides that said, okay, you want to start with this, and then this, and that has to tell a story. And then I'd go to the next level and say, okay, so what are the 3 main points I want to get across in each of those? And I would just put 3 points on them. And very rarely would you ever have to go any deeper than that in a presentation. I did exactly the same thing with the book. So I started off with what I wanted to get from the book. Then I had these 3 main chapters that I wanted to cover: the initial diary detox, the weekly diary detox, and the spot diary detox. And then within that, I thought that looks okay. And then I went down to the next level and so on. So I think it's about having a really good outline. And I use Microsoft Word, and I use something called Outline View. And Outline View allows you to shrink all of the information underneath each of the sections, so you can just see the section headers. And at every single point, you can just move stuff around, and it just makes sense as an overall journey through the book. That made a massive difference to me.
So that's you set your structure out through that way, and then everything else sort of evolved out of that.
Yeah, and that was it. As soon as the structure's there, and as soon as you look at it and go, yeah, if I could fill out each of those, that would be where I want it to go. It's amazing how quickly it is to fill out the bits. Right. Because it's like, well, I can talk about that really easily, and off you go.
So, I'm going, mate. Sorry.
No, you go on, go for it. Yeah.
Who is this book gonna help?
So that book is, well, it says it in the book. That is designed for anybody who thinks that the only thing standing between them and being successful at work is having enough time.
Right.
Which is pretty much everybody.
Yeah. So you came about this because
That's me.
you found people were saying when you needed some. Because is this
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So when we went back into, was this when you was working in the city, or was this when you went into business?
So I think probably the experience came from working in the city, because you see it everywhere. Managers in particular, are really bad at helping their people get better with their own time.
Yeah.
And they were never taught it. I learnt my approach to dealing with time from my manager, and they learnt it from their manager. and
Do
they
you think
weren't
there was
taught
like
it either.
sorry, Paul, but do you think there's like a culture of like, oh, I got to be busy?
Yeah, of course.
So it's kind of a bit
Yeah,
like, I got to hustle, I got to be busy, I got to be doing this, I got to be seen to be doing something. So we
I'll
over.
tell you a little story.
doing
When
all
I
of
had
it.
one job, I'm not going to mention who it was with, but I was told I was told to always walk around with a piece of paper in my hand.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're perceived to be working?
Exactly. Yeah. How rubbish is that?
Oh, that is rubbish. So, in that case, I'd be sitting there going, what are you doing? Now you see why the book's called that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it came about, so when I left the city after 20 years, I eventually realised I didn't want to be there anymore. And I did see the damage that managers were doing to their people, and I wanted to help change it. I wanted to create a world of better led people. And so, as I created this business, which isn't the business I now run, it was actually a coaching business called Tripodicus. Because Tripod was my nickname at school. But that's a whole different episode, and it's nothing to do with that. So as I started my business, and it was about leadership coaching, it was about helping people be better at what they do. People kept saying to me, look, it sounds really interesting, but I just haven't got any time to talk to you, I'm too busy. And I thought, how could you be too busy to talk about leadership? I mean, that's probably one of the most important things to talk about. And so I thought, well, I'm not sure if they're really saying this because they mean it, or whether they are, whether they're just saying it as an insincere objection to try and get rid of me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm too busy, I can't do that. So I remembered back to when I was working in the city, and at my peak, I was running a division of 350 people, and often people there would say they were too busy. And I had this little two-step process that I would take them through that showed them, yeah, they were too busy, but they were too busy because they were doing a lot of stuff they didn't really need to do, but they convinced themselves they did. And so as I started my business and people said they were too busy, I said, well, how about I give you back some time and then we'll use it to talk about this. And I half expected them to say, yeah, all right, no, I just don't want to know. I was just saying I was busy just to get rid of you. But they didn't. They said, how the hell are you going to give me back more time? And I thought, oh. And so for the next 3 months, I used that little two-step process and I got to see two things. I got to see what was inside their diary, which in itself was quite enlightening. But the most important thing is I got to hear the reasons they gave for what was in their diary. And I sat there and thought, oh my God, you don't need to do that. You don't see it. But I can't tell people. I can't say, well, get rid of that and get rid of it. Because you'll say, well, what do you know? I need to get a way of you finding it for yourself and seeing it for yourself. So I added 3 more steps onto the first 2. And that became the 5-step diary detox, which is now embodied in the book.
Right. And it's more than the book now, though, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, the book is only really recent. I mean, the book was only released last November. I mean, this journey...
Because you're coaching people on it. So it's not just like, oh, here's the book. You do coaching as well, right?
Well, I am, but it's kind of it's about to change, interestingly. So, yeah, originally I was a coach, and I was using it as a door opener. What I actually found was that it was allowing me to have much better conversations with people about what they're doing with their time. So it actually made my coaching a lot more impactful. Then I found a way of delivering it on a one-to-one basis, and then I found a way of delivering it on a workshop basis. And Mr. Waite was one of the participants at one of the early workshops. Then came the app, which supports people on probably the most important thing you do as part of Diary Detox, which is the weekly Diary Detox. 30 minutes you do once a week, and that will take you through the 5 steps, and it will get you to reflect on what you did last week and plan out your future week to make sure you really achieve what you want. So then there was that. Then came the discovery, which was people saying, well, it all sounds great, but I don't think our company's that bad. And it was like, I need something that will give you a little dip your toe in. So then there was that. And then came the book. And then things are about to change again around, this is now going to be something that I'll be putting into the hands of coaches so they can use it, which is exactly why I created it in the first place.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So they can use it for their business to help them have more impactful conversations more quickly. And then also doing some more work around the flexible working agenda, 4-day week, 9-day fortnight, etc.
Yeah.
I think you've got another book in you, haven't you?
There are 4 more books in my head.
Yes.
So the next one is probably going to be called, well, there's probably going to be a second edition to this one.
Yeah.
Which will include another category which is coming, which is the blue category, which is called living.
Right.
Which starts to move you into the kind of flexible working. What am I really doing to recharge and work more flexibly?
For myself and my...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that will be called What Are They Doing?
Yeah.
Sorry, What Are You Doing version 2. Then there's one called What Are They Doing, which is one that's going to be for managers so that they can use it as a mechanism for better managing their people, helping their people become better.
Yeah.
Then there's the meeting detox.
Yeah.
And then there's the email detox.
Oh, the email detox.
Which I did an event last
Control
week.
A, delete. Is it?
Oh, how did you know?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's more of an ebook.
Yeah.
It'll take about a second to see.
It's only one page, but
Just do that.
Leave.
So I did an event for a £100,000 turnover company in Essex last week. Did a day of time with their 72 senior leaders.
Yeah.
And that was the first chance for me to show the world the essence or kind of the genesis of the meeting and the email detox.
So what happens, say, with this company now? So you've done a time management workshop with them. They've gone through your detox diary.
Mm-hmm.
How does that impact them?
So in the first instance, what it does is it shows them, I think probably one of the most impactful things it does initially is it gets them to see for themselves what they are really doing
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
every day, every week. And it's often a surprise to them.
Yeah.
So there are little stories throughout the book of experiences that I've had with people who have done a diary detox. And a really simple one was there was a business coach and they just did the first step of the first part of diary detox, and that in itself gave them an insight.
Yeah.
Because they realised they were doing a lot of one-to-one face-to-face coaching. Of course, that was requiring them to go and travel to their clients.
Yeah.
One of the challenges that they'd been experiencing up to then is they were always late for the meetings.
Yeah.
Or no, not always. They were often late for the meetings.
Yeah.
But then they were often running out of time as well. What they realised is that just by doing the first step of the initial diary detox, they finally accepted for the first time that when you say you're going to go and speak to somebody about do some coaching with them, you're not only committing to the hour to hour and a half you're going to be spending with them doing that, it's the prep time, it's the travel time, it's the follow-up, like unprep if it is, and then it's actually talking to them about what's come out of that.
Yeah.
And so for the first time when they looked at it, they went, and this is before the colours were even applied, they just went, well, I can see where my problem is. I'm just spending so much time travelling.
Right.
What that actually got them to do is it actually got them to rethink their business model. They realised that they were a scarce resource, and therefore they started saying, well, maybe one-to-one, face-to-face on their site isn't the best approach for me.
Yeah.
So
They changed that.
That must be a really good insight into your pricing as well.
go on.
Well, I'm thinking because we have this sort of mentality that we're providing a service for X amount of time, but actually the time taken to provide that service could be 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
Well, that's what it should be.
Longer as well,
yeah.
right?
No,
in
it
their
should
pricing,
be.
not my pricing.
Not
Yeah.
your pricing. Yeah, so the pricing that you're charging for the
there's a lot.
services.
I think so.
It's a lot
I
more.
don't know where it's this country, but sometimes I feel like, I
We
experience
do
that.
have this, and we do.
There's
we
a lot
kinda-
more to
we
that
have-
hour. It's
Totally,
everything
yeah,
that took
yeah.
it.
The
got
training,
you
the training you've
start
done,
to that hour or
the
whatever.
2 years training
Yeah,
that
exactly.
you've done, or the course you've
Yeah,
taken, the
exactly.
exams you've taken.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
The
all
knowledge,
building on,
yeah.
it's the knowledge you've got and experience.
And then that is what it's about. It's about understanding the real time cost of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when you realise that an hour coaching session is actually probably going to be taking you 4 hours, hour each end travel, plus the prep time and the follow-up time as well. That's completely different. I mean, that basically cut your price in a quarter.
Yeah.
It's quartered your price.
Yeah.
It's like, do you really want to be charging yourself out of that rate?
Yeah.
Not sure you do.
And the other thing that's really jumped out at me as well is that how useful this must be for us procrastinators. Because I'm a big procrastinator, and some of it isn't positive thinking time. Some of it is what I call hamster wheel thinking time. Yeah. So how does that? I mean, I'm assuming that can help.
Yeah,
Give us
absolutely.
a bit more.
Yeah.
Can you tell me?
Well, there's
Paul, help me.
So it does. So there's one other part of it. Really, really weirdly, I actually thought that the colours. I mean, we haven't talked about the colours, but one of the key things around this is the colours. That what you're really doing is defined by the value you're getting from what you're doing. So, some of the viewers out there would be potentially already colour coding their diary, for example, and they might colour code all their meetings with clients yellow or travel time green or whatever else. What's interesting is that when you then, all that does is that really just gives you a colour classification of what you're doing. So you know that in all the yellow things, you're in a meeting with clients. But not all of those meetings might be valuable. So the difference between this is that the colours tell you the value you're getting from the thing you're doing. So that's an interesting thing in itself. But with regards specifically to the procrastination, the second thing that I didn't realise was going to be so valuable was the middle step, T. So the 5 steps spell out detox, D-E-T-O-X, diary, evaluate, target, opportunity and exchange. And the middle one, T, is targets. And what that's really about is the process will help you look at what you have been doing and what you want to be doing. But what's interesting is very, very few times do people actually spend time sitting down and thinking, what should I be doing in terms of what am I trying to achieve? And some people have role descriptions, they might have objectives, but those objectives change and nobody notices. And what the T-step is about getting people to finally consider, well, what is it, if we got to a part in the year, be it the end of the quarter, end of the half year, end of the year, if I get to that point, what is it I want to have achieved specifically at that point? And then by first of all considering that, which many of us don't, by then using that as part of the process, you get to think, okay, well, what do I want to achieve? And is next week set up so that I'm going to achieve all those things? That results in you filling your diary a lot more with not just the meetings that you've got booked, but the meetings with yourself you should have to just do your job. And what's interesting is the procrastination tends to happen at the times when we don't have things booked in our diary.
Yep.
So this has the effect of filling your diary more so that you are spending it, not procrastinating, doing things that are actually targeted towards your targets.
There you go.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I'm going to go next. I'm going to go read the book.
You're gonna go. I like it. I like this tagline here. I don't know if you said about the uncomfortable truth about how you crossed out, spend, waste your time at work.
Yeah.
But we all do it.
Absolutely.
We all do it.
There's a funny little story about that. So about 2 weeks before I published the book, it wasn't called that.
Right.
It was actually called The Diary Detox.
Yeah. Okay.
And Rachel, who I mentioned earlier, the brand story lady, I told her, and she said, "Oh." I went, "What?" She said, "Well, I didn't think you were going to call it that." And I went, "What?" She went, "Well, look at your brand story." So I looked at my brand story, and the tagline from my business is, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh, that's a really good idea." So I put that on there, but I thought, with most books, you have the title of the book, and then you have this like subtitle.
Yeah.
And I thought, what can mine be? It's got to be something that kind of confounds expectations. And I was sat in a little restaurant with my wife in Cornwall on a Friday, and she was having a conference call. We'd made a kind of early start to the weekend, and I was playing with my iPad, and I had this "What are you doing?" and I'd written down a few things, and I just wrote down the uncomfortable truth about how you spend time at work. And then I turned it round to her, and she went, "Not sure." And she pointed at the word "spend," and I thought "spend," and I literally crossed it out and wrote the word "waste." And at that point, she was on her phone. She went, and at that point, that is actually the word that I wrote when I had that realization.
Right.
So I cut and pasted it on there, and
yeah.
it became the uncomfortable truth about how you waste time at work, because we are wasting a lot more than we really believe.
But and does this like?
And we all got the same 24 hours in the day, right? We do.
Speak for yourself. No.
We do.
But this ties over into personal life as well, right? So
Absolutely.
So do you colour code? Like, would someone colour code it out like after work, or is it so you got the extra time and not staying behind extra hours to get stuff done or whatever?
That's a good question. I mean, when I first created it, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
And I used to. So if I did something non-work related during the work day, I would have traditionally coloured it brown. And brown, for any that doesn't know, is something I call floating, which is where you're not adding value in terms of what your role is. And I've been doing that, and I've been kind of okay with doing that. But there was something that was still not sitting quite as comfortably with me. And then towards the latter half of last year, it was my wedding anniversary, mine and my wife's, and I wanted to take her away to do something in an afternoon. And I normally would be working.
Yeah.
So I put this kind of 3-hour slot in. We went to a spa in Bath, and I basically put wedding anniversary, Bath, and I coloured it brown. And I sat there and went, I don't like that, because the concept about brown behaviour, I call it, is that you're supposed to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get rid of that. I want it in there.
That is value.
It's to my personal life, not to my role. Yeah. And so I thought to myself, okay, so I need something else. And I'd noticed that when I first inserted it, I use an Apple calendar for my calendar mostly. And the default colour that Apple uses when you insert any meeting is blue. And blue happens to be my favourite colour. And so I thought, maybe there's another category here, which isn't work related, it's more personal. And so I created something called blue behaviour, which is called living.
Right.
But what was really, and the reason that was just a little thing I did for myself, but it was what happened that day that made me go, oh, there's something in this, which is that I kind of realised, hang on a minute, when I went and did that, normally if I'd gone and done like a nativity play and I should have been working, there'd have been a little bit of a twinge. I work for myself, so I don't need permission from anybody.
That's right.
But there was still a little twinge.
Yeah.
You should be working, you should be working.
Yeah.
By putting that blue bit in and by moving everything else that was in its place to elsewhere, I was cool. And I came back and went, oh, this is about giving yourself permission to do work outside normal working hours. And so, that's now become...
I've got to admit, that's probably one of the hardest things I've found. And it's because, I want to be, say, at a school play and have that time, and I need to be there. And then I think, but I got all these... So
by blocking that time out and making it...
That self-care is so important, because I always end up telling people this, it's the old oxygen mask, right?
Yeah.
That's where the time on planes, put your own oxygen mask on first.
I use that very example.
Loads of people, it's a real coaching thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you do, it's so important to look, you've got to do that self-care, you've got to look after yourself for your physical health, your mental health, and that gives you the opportunity to then play your top game.
Time with family, children and family, you're never getting that back anyway. So.
Well, you're never getting it back.
Or you're trying to make up for something and it's too late.
Yeah.
So.
But not only that, time with yourself as well.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I'm training for London Marathon, and I block that time out as blue living time.
Yeah.
Because I want to finish work at a certain time and go and do this, because I know ultimately it's about my recharge. This is really important to me, and I feel so much better. I did a video on LinkedIn.
Sorry, Paul. Does that help you motivate you towards like the training as well? Because sometimes with people with fitness, being like we're here, we can find excuses to not do something. So do you think having that blocked in there is like that's it? That's my time.
I think it does.
Yeah.
But I think it's also the colour as well. I think there's a colour attached to it. I mean, you'll notice I'm wearing green. Yeah. I tend to wear the colour when I'm working. I wear the colour that is predominantly what I'm doing that day. Yeah. So this is green, communicating. I'm blue. You are blue, so you're living.
Living.
No, he's not really.
I think I'm living.
But what's nice about that is that by having it as blue, when I look at my diary... Sorry, what I was going to say that is that I'm wearing green, and anybody that sees my videos on LinkedIn, I once was talking about something that was to do with thinking, and I happened to be wearing a green coat. And somebody said, oh my God, I saw your video and you were wearing green. Whenever you do a video now, wear the colour that you're talking about.
Right, okay,
went, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, because what it actually did, I will answer your question about
Sorry.
But what it actually did was that every time I then spoke about doing, I would wear red.
Yeah.
If I was talking about monitoring, I would wear amber, and so on. And what happened is people would approach me and say, I saw your video this morning, I saw it was amber, and I had to listen. And it was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Right, okay.
So what was good about that is that I realised that colour had an effect on people.
Yeah.
So what I'm hoping is that by looking at that and realising that the blue is living, and blue should be associated with you getting time for yourself and recharging, what I'm hoping is when you look at in your diary detox isn't about telling you what to do. It's just about interrupting your natural instinct to give your time away willy-nilly. So by looking at your diary and seeing that blue there, if you choose to carry on working, then power to you. It's entirely up to you. But at least you'll look at it and go, okay, I could carry on with this red activity, or I could go and just recharge for myself. And that is a conscious decision you'll be making because you've seen that colour. Yeah. So I think, it does have that effect of incentivising, not just by blocking out the time, but by making that time stand out in some way. It's important.
There's that good subconscious shift, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah,
it certainly works for me.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So we basically, it's given more of a plan to whatever your plans are, I guess.
To do whatever's most important to you, and that's the targets. And it's so... I mean, interestingly, I would say, I know I said that the two most important things were the colours and the targets. Yeah. If somebody were to ask me what is the most important aspect of those two, Q. Paul, what is the most important thing? I'll tell you what it is.
I thought it was...
It's not the colours.
It's a psychic link-up.
Yeah, it was broken. The link was down.
So, completely unrehearsed.
So you can tell.
Do you know when you talked about the hypnosis earlier?
Yeah.
That's where I went.
You were zoned out.
I was thinking about the next question, but you totally threw me off.
Sorry, man.
That's all right.
Translate.
But to answer that question that was never asked...
We'll edit that out.
Yeah.
It was... it's actually, it's not the colours, it's the targets.
Yeah.
It's amazing how just spending some time... And in the weekly detox, probably only about 5 minutes is spent on the T-step thinking about your targets. But just spending that time is amazing because you look at it and go, actually, what am I looking to achieve at the moment? Yeah. And just having that, even if your week next week gets completely blown out of the water, just having that 30 minutes and more specifically that 5 minutes to think about your targets is so powerful. Because if it doesn't get blown out of the water with interruptions, you've spent some really good time thinking about what you want to get done.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. When you know where you want to go, it's a lot easier to get there.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think similar to what Paul Holmes take that time out to have strategize every week.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and so that would be green behaviour bit because that's thinking about where am I going with this? What's my vision? What's my strategy? Yeah. So
all the same stuff. Cool. Listen, thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's talked so passionately. Thank you. Who's on the edge of our seats?
Paul's book is available.
That's all good. No, it's not. It's available on Amazon. So it's Amazon. It's a paperback.
Cool.
It's a Kindle, and it's an audio book.
Are you speaking?
I am speaking. I'm really sorry about that. A friend of mine bought it, and he went, hang on a minute, are you the narrator? This is going to be weird.
But I think books, when it's read by the author, are so much better.
Authentic.
And you can speed it up for fun. So
that's why I did it. Yeah, Donald Duck. But all of the proceeds are going to charity for the next year. I'm doing the London Classic.
Right.
London Marathon, Ride London and Swim Serpentine.
And what's your charity?
So the one for London Marathon is Guide Dogs.
Nice. Yeah.
The one for Ride London is going to be pancreatic cancer. And the one for Swim Serpentine is going to either be Mind or Calm, the campaign against living miserably.
Sure. Brilliant.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Look, apply for somebody who needs it.
And if someone wants to get you in for coaching how to... Was it accredited to you? Accredited to Diary Detox?
Well, the accreditation for coaches, that isn't happening yet. That'll be happening very soon. All of it is on diarydetox.com.
Yeah.
But if a company thought, well, maybe we could get some benefit out of this if they're not getting the best from their people, out of the crazy number of hours that they're spending, the best thing to do is have what I call a discovery. It's a free session. Come and do it for an hour. And it gives people a very, very interesting insight to what's happening in their company.
And better hurry up, because your calendar's going to be very full from what you were telling me just before we went on air, but I'm not going to say too much about it, so
let's see.
Best get in fast.
So your calendar is full.
Right.
It's supposed to be full.
It's supposed to be full. Yeah.
Someone was listening.
Yeah. As in, it's going to be full for a long time. Thank you, guys. So we're back next month.
Yeah, thanks,
Matt. Definitely. All right. Please drop in a comment, and of course, hearts. We want some hearts today.
It's all gone a bit Deadpool.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye bye.